training with. I'll get back to now which fuel we use when. So those are foods from the grain group mostly. So the grain is what you guys will know is the breads, the cereals, pasta, starches, carbohydrate. I know people refer to these foods in different ways. So that will include the fuel food, and the fuel food also will include any kind of fruits that we eat, because they also provide us with carbohydrate, which is the energy. And it will also include a little bit of the dairy group. So dairy, especially milk and yogurt, does contain carbohydrate, which is then our fuel. So this will be mainly the fuel food. And remember, in this group, there will also be a lot of sugary stuff that is not necessarily classified as a group, as a food group, but a lot of, sports bars and gels and drinks and so forth. Then in terms of the building food, so the building food is mostly the stuff that we eat for recovery. So these are the things that builds us. So it's got to do with muscle protein synthesis to make us stronger, but also to repair muscle damage after training or matches. And those are the protein foods. So the protein would be the meat, the fish, the chicken. I don't know if we have any vegetarians here, but the legumes will fall into this group, like the chickpeas, the lentils, soya beans, baked beans, and so forth. And then also in the dairy group. So the dairy has got a dual function. We're coming back to that because it's quite an important group and then an easy group to include. So the dairy contains a carb and a protein. And then the other groups we talk about is the protective food. Here, fruits lie in a dual function, that they protect us, as well as the vegetables then protects us. So the protective food is mainly, obviously, that we don't get sick, but there's a lot of nutrients in the protective food, a lot of vitamins and minerals that we do need. So it doesn't help you load all your fuel sources. So we've got really storage full of carbohydrate, but to get stuff out of the storage, you need that protective food. So there's a lot of vitamins and minerals you need from that side to get the stuff mobilized into the body. And the protection is also against getting sick. And the protective food also has got a huge function more and more, if you read in sport nutrition, more and more in terms of ergogenic prospects, something like nitrate that a lot of people will use as a supplement, but the nitrates is usually in the vegetable groups that we eat. So there's a lot of the vegetable and the fruit group that actually enhances recovery, because they help to delay muscles onset, the soreness of the muscle, and they also help as an antioxidative agent, so that can help recovery. And a lot of people that I work with in practice, that's our major group that we struggle to get enough from. And sometimes if you look from the eyes of just, I need to get enough because it will increase my performance, then maybe we will be better at it. So what we're trying to do is we try to include all these food groups with every meal that we, or not every meal, but at least throughout the day that we eat. Just in terms of getting back now to the exercise part of it, is this use of fuel. So the main thing, if we play matches, we want to make sure that we delay fatigue. So a lot of the soccer stats will tell you that a lot of the matches are actually lost in the last 10, 15 minutes of the match. So we're leading all the way 1-0, and then just before the end of the game, there's the equalizer. Or the other way around, we're behind all the time, and then we actually score. So it's 1-1, and then somebody scores in the last 10, 15 minutes. And what we're trying to do here is we're trying to avoid the fatigue so that we can play the whole time with full storage. Now, what does it mean, and what does fatigue mean? And that can usually be explained in the hand of these graphs that I give you here. So on the one graph, you will see, if you look at your screen on the left-hand side, you will see that the type of fuel that I use is dependent on the intensity of what I exercise with. So you will see a pink bar, which indicated low exercise intensity, the moderate one, the green bar, and the blue bar, the high intensity. So we know that soccer is quite a high intensity game. They call it a high intensity intermittent sport. So the intensity is very high because there's a lot of sprint time. But yes, there's also a lot of recovery time, depending if you play midfield or defense or offense or striking or whatever, and depending obviously how good the team are and where the ball is most of the time. But there is a very high percentage of sprint time in soccer. So when the guys move, they move quite fast, and then the recovery time can differ. So in the intermittent sports like soccer, so any sport that you actually put in a sprint and you slow down even to a standing position and you have to go into a sprint again, that are sports that really takes up a lot of energy. So the total energy that we spend in the game is really, really high. And, obviously depending on which level you play at. So if you look at this, you will see that the carbohydrate, which is the blue line going through the graphs, as soon as we've got an exercise intensity of about above 80% of VO2 max, so that's pretty much high intensity stuff, then you will use about 80% or more of your fuel mix as carbohydrate. So that's why we often refer to carbohydrate as a jet fuel. What will happen if I don't have carbohydrate on board? We will get to the food just now. Just give me a minute on this. But if we do not have carbs on board, say, for instance, I didn't eat anything before a match, or I ate bacon and eggs, but no bread, so there were no carbohydrate sources, that will mean that you cannot go to the blue line. You can't go that very high intensity. You will be able to play. That wouldn't be a problem. But you're going to have to sprint at a slower pace. Because when we don't have carbs, we have to use fat as a fuel source, and fat can only be used as a fuel source if we go slow. So that's much more our diesel fuel than what we do. So this already will give you an indication that if we talk about what we should eat before matches, the fuel type would probably be the carbohydrate type that we need to include. Somewhere in the middle, there's a crossover effect, so just about 50% where you use just about 50% of the VO2 max, where you use about an equal amount of carb and fat as a fuel source. Now, the problem with this is usually because we do not have enough jet fuel storage. So the jet fuel tank in the body is small, where the fat tank, the diesel fuel, is quite a big tank. So you will always have enough fat fuel to do slow gains or slow matches, but we need that diesel. It's like giving yourself a fifth gear. So the problem is, because we've got small fuel tanks of the jet fuel, we often run out of the jet fuel during matches, or if you have to play another match coming up. And if you ran out of the jet fuel, obviously the sprint performance will decrease and your overall performance will decrease. The other thing that's important in terms of this graph is that the carbohydrate is very important for brain function. So your thinking or your cognitive ability is very much dependent on the blood sugar level, which comes from carbohydrate. And there's been a lot of studies done, especially in football players, where we measure low carb availability, and then we measure their reaction time and also their dribbling speed, but also the way in which they make decisions on the pitch. So usually if the blood sugar falls, all those parameters actually decrease. Now, in this graphs on your right-hand side, if you look at the right-hand side, you will also see the intensity of the exercise, but there you can see basically the contribution of the different fuel sources. So the purple one, or the purple block, indicate muscle glycogen. So in these graphs, it tells you how much muscle glycogen we're actually using. So the top one is in a 0 to 30 minute of exercise, and the bottom one is if we go 90 to 120 minutes of exercise. And then obviously if you look from left to right, it's increasing intensity. So the muscle glycogen is basically that's the tanks where you store your carbohydrate. So that's where all the starches is stored as a fuel source. And this then is used, obviously, you can see there, in mild exercise intensity, you don't use those stores. But as soon as we go to moderate to extreme heavy exercise, you really use that fuel source. So the muscle glycogen will determine the amount of petrol I put in that tank, will determine how long am I going to go fast for. It won't make you faster. It will give you actually support your speed, but it will make you sprint a little bit better right at the end. So that's the muscle glycogen, that's the purple part. And you can see in the heavy exercise how much actually that contributes to your fuel mix. The green blocks are usually the muscle triglycerides. Now, triglycerides is just a fat. It's another name for fat. And there you can see in the mild exercise, you've got a little bit of fat in the muscle that the body will use. In moderate exercise, you actually use more of that fat because it's much more diesel fuel dependent. And if you go to heavy exercise, the body still uses the fat, but at a much lower rate. So where will I then use the fat? If I play hard and sprint hard, it's in those times that you actually slow down and stand still. That's where the body will then use increased amount of fat. But the problem usually is not running out of fat because most of us has got enough fat. The yellow part is also a fat source, but that is the fatty acids that's in the blood, right? That's roaming around in the blood. And then the pink ones, those are the glucose. So if you drink any carbohydrate drink and you absorb it, it gets to glucose in the blood, so sugar in the blood. And the sugar in the blood, you can see there's an increased use of it during heavy exercise, but even in mild exercise. But the problem why we don't use more blood sugar is because we don't have more. So at any given time, your body only has a teaspoon of sugar in the blood. So that's why that will stay pretty much stable. And our worry is if you're going to use too much, that will fall, and that will influence then your rate of play. At the bottom, the same thing. You will just see this is longer periods of time, and you can see how the body in mild exercise, if you're going to train for 1.5 hours or longer, or matches that goes 1.5 hours or longer, they will usually be very much fat dependent if it's mild exercise. If we push intensity to a moderate exercise, you can again see how the glycogen is being used. And the reason there isn't a bar with heavy exercise in a 90-minute period is because we usually cannot sustain 90 minutes of that heavy exercise. All right. So this is just to give you a background of why we advise you to eat certain things at certain times, just to understand what's going on in the body. All right. So let's just look at a little bit more food orientated. So what is carbohydrate if we talk about carbohydrate need? So we already know that's the fuel for high intensity stuff, or if we go for a long period of time. We know we don't have a big storage space of it, so limited tank capacity. And what is going to happen if we eat too little of it? We're going to get tired. So your muscles will get tired, or your brain will get tired. We talk about a peripheral or central fatigue. So peripheral means in the legs, it's that feeling that we sometimes have that everything in me wants to sprint, but there's just no legs. So you're always that split second behind. The central fatigue is when your brain actually gets tired. That is where we make silly mistakes. So the pass is not accurate anymore, or the dribbling speed decrease, or my reaction time decrease. And that's why they then can score on us so quickly. Because of the low blood sugar, the reaction time is not as fast as it would have been earlier in the game. So that is if we eat too little. If we eat too much of the stuff, if we eat a loaf of bread every day, then obviously your body mass is going to increase. So you will increase fat. And that also will be detrimental to performance, because obviously now you've got a heavier body to move through space. So that is the amount. If we look at what we should eat, we look at the quality of food. And there we talk about complex carbohydrates. So the complex carbohydrate would be stuff like potatoes, sweet potatoes, corn. If you eat bread, it's whole wheat bread. If you're going to eat any kind of cereal, it will be an all bran or wheat pix or whole wheat pro nitro. So anything that's much closer to nature than what we have refined stuff. So the refined stuff is the white bread, the white biscuits, very refined floury stuff. And those are the things that obviously does not bring that much quality into your body. I usually say if you put crap in, you're going to get crap out. So it's very, very important that we increase the fiber components thereof. The timing, so when should we consume carbs? Remember now, I said the storage is limited. So it makes sense to rather have regular intake of smaller portions. So instead of having 6 slices of bread for breakfast, it makes sense to have rather just 2, and later on in an hour or 2, you eat 2 again, and in an hour or 2, you eat 2 again, so that we constantly drip fuel into that fuel tank. If you're going to eat all of it at once, what's going to happen is you're going to fill up the tank, and then the tank usually floods, and that flooding is then going to a fat store. So that's why we want to make sure we eat it throughout the day, but very, very important that we concentrate on eating enough carbs before the game, during the game, and after the game. I will definitely get to the amounts just a little bit later. If you look at the protein, remember I said that would be the recovery food. So the recovery food has all got to do with muscle protein synthesis. So if we play hard and we run hard, the body usually breaks down muscle. Even if those of you that's in the gym, the body will break down muscle. It's a good thing because after then, when you go into a recovery period, the body will basically synthesize or make that muscle or increase the muscle and repair the muscle. So that's why it's important that in the recovery period, there is protein because protein is the building block for the muscle. And that's why it's called the recovery food. And that's why recovery time is so important, that we do eat proper during recovery time. I've got so many athletes that on their off day or the day that they're not training, they're eating pizza and other junkies, and that makes the recovery suboptimal. So you actually do all this work to send a signal to the body to build a better body, but then during the building process, you give the junk food to build with. So therefore, you're not going to have the optimal outcome thereof. So what we want to achieve is we want to achieve about 1.3 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram body mass per day. It is quite easy to achieve that with food intake. So you don't necessarily have to use the supplementation. We must make sure that it's high quality proteins. The high quality protein usually comes from animal sources, like lean meat, fish, chicken, your dairy products, the milk, the yogurt, the eggs. If somebody is vegetarian and they don't eat animal products, you can still obtain quite a high quality intake of protein. We just need to be clever of how we combine certain protein sources. So the plant proteins, you will get them from nuts, seeds, tofu, soya beans, legumes, lentils, and so forth. So totally possible, just a little bit more in terms of thinking what you're doing. The other very important thing about protein is the timing. So protein is not stored in the body. So we don't have storage space like the glycogen or the fat stores. So what happens is if we eat a lot of protein all at once, say for instance, we don't eat protein through the day, but tonight I eat a whole chicken, what's going to happen is the body is going to use some of that protein for muscle protein synthesis, actually as building blocks. But the rest of that protein is just going to be used as the energy source. So it's basically just a very expensive sugary source that you put in. So what we try and do with protein intake is we try and distribute it throughout the day. So what usually happens is as soon as we eat a bit of protein, the body, you can see the amino acids or the protein in the blood going up. It stays there and it lingers around for about 2 hours. Then it basically drops back to the baseline. So it means every 2 to 3 hours, we should try to eat a protein source. And the amount we need to eat is about 0.25 to 0.4 gram per kilogram. I just put these numbers in if you want to calculate yours, but it means that we need to eat about 90 grams at a given time, but over 4 to 5 meals throughout the whole day, rather than what we eat 250 grams only at one meal. Then it's also important for those of you that's in a phase where you really want to increase your muscle mass, then it becomes important to have another protein feeding just before you go to bed. So if I ate supper at 6 or 7 in the evening, then I have another feeding just before going to bed. So 9 o'clock or so, and that we usually do with milk. So milk is a slow release protein, so that's usually a very good one to drink then before you go and sleep. And the last is then the diesel fuel that we spoke about, the fat. So the fat is definitely necessary as a fuel source, but also it insulates the body and it protects basically the vital organs. It also then is used under low aerobic activity, so slow, low stuff that we do. And the quantity usually that we want to increase or we include is about 30% of our total energy intake. So about a third of the energy that we eat should come from the fatty sources. If we talk about quality here, we talk about the increased intake of plant fats rather than animal fats. So we talk about rather eating nuts, avocado, olives, olive oil, seeds, those kind of fats. because they usually have an anti-inflammatory role. Now, anti-inflammatory is important because when we do any kind of exercise, there's inflammation in the body. It's a normal process. It happens in all of us. But the inflammation sometimes causes a little bit of the muscle soreness, and it does cause a little bit of damage. So if we eat anti-inflammatory stuff, that usually takes control of that. So it will decrease the delayed onset muscle soreness. The other thing that's quite important is to try and eat fish more often, especially oily fish, like pilchards and sardines and trout. So those are mackerel, those are good oily fishes that does enhance the intake of this omega-3 fatty acid, which is the good one for anti-inflammatory aspects. And we need to try and eat the fatty fish 3 times a week. All right, so let's move to pre-match match day. I think with what I explained to you guys right now, this will make a lot more sense. So the first thing that usually people ask is, when should we eat the last meal? So the indication is the longer we wait, the bigger the meal must be. So if we have game time at this slide, you will see if we eat an hour before, if we eat 2 hours before, 3 or 4, what the meal will consist of. You know now carbohydrate is our fuel food, so you know that will be the predominant thing that we eat. There will be a bit of protein maybe and a bit of fat. Okay, I'm going to explain it at the hand of, say we're having a breakfast of toast and eggs and bacon. If we only have an hour before a game, so it's either a very early game or you're delayed eating, but it's an hour to go. And now all of a sudden we want to eat something and we wonder. You will see from this slide, the very big orange piece will tell you that the meal that you eat, if there's only an hour left, must be predominant carbohydrates. So this will be something like just dry toast, or toast maybe with a little bit of jam or honey on it, or a cereal bar or fruit. But it's basically just a carbohydrate source. And the main reason for this is as soon as we add protein or fat to a meal, it stays in your stomach for a much longer period of time. So you're going to feel uncomfortable whilst you play. So this is quite important if when you time your meal. So I don't mind you eating bacon, eggs, and bread, but then you must time it for further away from the match. If I've got 2 hours before, you will see now there's a little bit of protein added to it. So we can eat from the orange group, you can eat then the bread. The protein will, for instance, then be, say, the eggs, little bit of fat, maybe margarine on the bread with eggs. So that is if we have 2 hours to go, but you will see predominantly the carbohydrates. So it's more 4 slices of bread and 2 eggs than what it is 4 eggs and only 1 slice of bread. And then if we've got 3 hours to go, between 2 and 3, you will see then we can start adding a little bit more fat, where if the last meal before the game is 4 hours, you can have your bread with the eggs from the protein group, with the bacon from the fat group. So depending on when you're going to eat, you need to plan your intake. So what the professional teams do, they eat their last big meal 4 hours before. But if I say big meal, I mean big meal. So think of a PSL game that's been played, say, at 8 at night. So they will probably have their last big meal at about 3, 4-ish in the afternoon. But then because you guys train hard, if I ate at 4, they usually get hungry again before kickoff. And what we then do is we give them a big meal with enough protein and a bit of fat at 4 hours before. But then 2 hours to go, they get another snack. So they will have a muffin or apple or banana or something like that. And then they will have a carbohydrate drink, like an Energade or Powerade or Game, which they will then drink, sip on before warm-up, during warm-up, and finish it after warm-up before they go into the game to make sure there's enough jet fuel on board. So it will look something like this. So 3 to 4 hours before kickoff, as I said, you'll have carbohydrate. The indication, I gave examples in this slide, and that example is basically based on a 75-kilogram player. So the carbohydrate is then 3 to 4 hours before kickoff, quite a lot. So we usually say 4 hours before 4 grams per kilogram, 1 hour before 1 gram per kilogram. We have a little bit of protein in that meal, and then very important is hydration. I'm going to talk a little bit more on hydration when we're done as well. So the example meal would be about a cup of rice with 90 grams of chicken. You have salad with that and a bread roll. Can you see the double starch, the rice with the bread roll? That will then enhance the carbohydrate intake. With that, the cup of fruit salad. Remember, fruit salad is also a fuel food. With yogurt on it, you can also use custard. Remember, the yogurt and the milk also has got fuel food in it, plus 2 glasses of orange juice, which is also fuel food. So you will see the dominance of the fuel food with very little protein and very little fat in that meal. The fluid intake is then provided through the glasses of the orange juice. So that would be a good pre-match meal for 75 kg player. If it is 2 hours before kickoff, so say for instance 4 hours before kickoff, that is the meal that you ate, but 2 hours before, now you start getting hungry again. So we try to hydrate again, to have at least 500 ml of water with 2 hours to go, and then in the hour before the kickoff, we have a carbohydrate again. This can be an energy bar, raisins, it can be a fruit that you eat, or it can be a drink. So 15 minutes before the kickoff, we have fluid again. So you can see the dominance of the continuous intake of food throughout. We try and avoid excessive amounts of fiber. And the reason why that is because fiber stays in the gut. So it can upset the stomach when you go into a match, and the fat will delay the stomach empty. If we then go into during matches, so remember now, what is the main issue? We're running out of fuel, or we get tired because we're dehydrated. So those are the two main issues we need to look at. So the best opportunity, obviously, to refuel would be halftime. It's like a pit stop in car racing. That is where we need to refuel, put more petrol in the tank. And I think a lot of the players I work with is reluctant halftime to take stuff in. They're either scared their stomach is going to be upset, or they're just too tired that they can't get stuff in. And I think, at a very young age, please try and get this right and make it a habit so that you definitely take in stuff on halftime. So the carbohydrate intake, we usually want a carbohydrate intake of about 30 to 60 grams per hour. Think of it as fuel. So you're not going to put a liter of fuel in a car and then drive to Cape Town and back. It will never work. So if you're just going to put a liter of fuel or 10 grams or just 2 or 3 jelly babies into your system and think you're going to play a whole half at a high intensity, it will not happen. So we try to push the intake, and that can be through having a carbohydrate drink like Energy Powerade Gain. You need to take about 500 ml of it. Or if you don't like those, you can have fruit juice that's diluted. You can have an energy bar if you can stomach eating at halftime, or you can have a gel or jelly sweets as such. So just important, I put on that slide how much. It's about 300 ml of juice, 1.5 energy bar, or 2 bananas. So it's a lot, guys. And please start with just having small amounts and then build it up from there. In studies actually that they've done, they showed that the intake of carbohydrate solution on halftime allowed soccer athletes to have a 33% greater running time than what they ingested the placebo. With other words, 33% that the people were actually running more and not standing around, because this is usually how they measure it. We will see what your running performance is in the first half, how much you run, and then all of a sudden in the second half, the amount that you run is cut in half. And your opponents didn't change. So that is usually how they measure it. There's also an effect of what we call a carbohydrate malference. So even if you can't get it down because you're nauseous, if you put carbs in your mouth and you rinse it, and even if you spit it out then, you will still get an enhanced performance, because it's like a promise that you make the body that there will be carbs coming in. So this works on your brain, and the brain actually experiences that I'm not that tired. But you can't carry on doing this all the time, because some other time the carb needs to come. You can't just promise and never give. So that is then during matches. I'll get to the hydration in a little bit more detail just now. In terms of recovery, there's three things we need to recover. So the first thing is we need to put the petrol back in the tank. Now remember, with recovery, we always ask this question, how much time do we have to recover? Now, if you play league stuff and you only play one game a week, you usually have a long recovery time depending on what your training does. But if we're in a tournament setup where there's 2-3 games every single day, then the recovery time is quite short. And often in these kind of tournaments, the team that recovers the best will actually, go further than the very talented team that's not recovering. So what we want to do is we want to recover the fuel as quickly as possible. Now, what is important with fuel recovery, it doesn't take a minute. It's not like you park at a petrol station and they fill up in 5 minutes. To recover full fuel store fully can sometimes take up to 24 hours to recover it fully. So therefore, we have to start early because usually in that early time, the recovery speed is enhanced. So within 30 minutes. And that can be juice, it can be a fluid, or it can be food. So cereal or juice or a carbohydrate-based drink or flavored milk. I think most of you have heard about milk being quite a good recovery. So that's the first one. We usually talk about the 3 R's of recovery. So the one is refuel. The second one is repair. Now the repair is where we want to increase the muscle protein synthesis. So what happens during the game is your body breaks down muscle to supply a little bit of fuel. But that breakdown of muscle does not stop until you eat after training. Or after the match. So say, for instance, match end now, but then the coach talks for another 30 minutes. Whilst he's talking and you're not eating or drinking, the muscle keeps on breaking down. So the way in which we can stop it is to eat the carbohydrate source, but then follow up with the protein. So as soon as you take the carb drink, the breakdown stops, but there's no building happening. You have to then eat the protein for the building to start. So therefore, we talk about the repair is the second R, and we have to have 20 to 25 grams of that. The other thing that's important, which I will get to, is the rehydrate, with other words, the recapturing of the fluid. So we try to do this recovery within 30 minutes, and then we try to repeat it for the next 4 hours. That's also where I see a lot of tournament setups where people will fall behind this. They will maybe do the recovery drink, but nothing again. So say you play morning, you finish at 10. Lunch is served at 12, but your next game starts at 12:30. So a lot of the time, the team then does not eat at 12, but they eat after the next game. But then you don't snack again before your next game. So you had a snack at 10 o'clock, and then the next game only ends at about 1:30, and then you only get to meal then. And that can also then decrease the performance. Remember, alcohol is not a carb loading thing, so alcohol actually decreases your muscle protein synthesis. So the rate at which your body is going to build muscle usually reduces up to 24% in this period. Just because sometimes in football there's a quite a high use of alcohol on these tournament setups. So post-match, what it will look like, the carbohydrate with the protein, and then the fluid. You will have flavored milk, about 330 mils of that, plus a peanut butter sandwich, plus a banana. That will be a good recovery meal for 75 kg person. Again, I don't necessarily want you to remember the numbers, but I want you to really recognize how much food it takes. That one energy bar is not going to recover you from a whole match played. Maybe if you were on the bench the whole match, but definitely not when you were on the pitch. And then up until 4 hours after exercise, when you can get to a meal, then something like 2 bread rolls with chicken and mayonnaise and 500 mils of milk, so that we can enhance the recovery. Just a little bit on hydration and where this hydration fits in. The reason why we discuss it separately is because it's so important, because it's such a low-hanging fruit. So with low-hanging fruit, I mean it's an easy thing to fix, and you get a lot of increased performance if you fix hydration. So dehydration makes a huge effect on performance, easy to fix, and then you get a huge improvement in performance, especially endurance performance. So pre-match, we want to really start dehydrated, with other words, in a fully hydrated state. How would we know that? You would know because there was urine production. So you went to the bathroom and there was actually quite a large urine production, and the color of the urine is a light straw color. Then you know I'm probably fully hydrated. You can also check your body mass changes. So if you lose weight, say we weigh before a match, we weigh after the match, the weight that you've lost is usually indicative of a fluid loss. As I said on the previous slide, we're doing 5 to 7 mils, so that's about 350 to 550 mils for a 75 kg person, 4 hours beforehand. So 4 hours out, you have it. Then you see, did I have to go to the bathroom? If you went to the bathroom, is the color of the urine quite light? So if you had a big volume of urine and the color was light urine, then you know you're fully hydrated. If not, then drink another 3 to 5 milliliters per kilogram, so another cup to a cup and a half, 2 hours before the event. And then another bit just after the warm-up, just before you go into the match as such. Now, it does enhance the retainment of fluid if there's sodium in these beverages. Sodium is electrolytes. So a little bit of salt. So sports drinks usually have it in. If you drink juice that doesn't have the sodium chloride, so it helps to put a pinch of salt to that, or eat a salty thing like a pretzel maybe, or biltong, so that there's salt in, in that whole mix. During the match, then please use opportunities that you have to drink. If there's water bottles next to the field, try and drink when you can drink. It's always better to drink small amounts regularly than what we use one bolus all at once. If you don't get the opportunity to drink, then at least half time, make sure you drink enough, and make sure that whatever you drink maybe has carbohydrate in it, unless you're eating carbs like a banana or jelly sweets or so forth. And then after exercise, it is quite important that you hydrate also quickly. That's the other R of recovery. And the idea would be, if you've got your weight difference, that you replace that weight that you've lost. So say, for instance, I weighed 60 before a match, I played, and after the match, I weighed 58.5. It means I've lost 1.5 kilos of fluid. And 1.5 kilos of fluid is equal to 1.5 liters of fluid. So we usually at least replace 1.5 liters, if not more, because remember, you carry on sweating. And if I'm going to drink a lot of fluid, that will go and flush through the kidney. So you will go and pee it out. So it is important then to make sure that you maybe drink a bit more. Try not to drink this whole 1.5 liters all at once, but space it so that you have a bottle with you and you carry on drinking until you have to go to the bathroom and until the color of the urine is quite light. Make sure there is sodium-containing foods or beverage. Remember again, this is salt. So if I eat salty things, that will enhance the thirst so that you drink actually more, and it will also make you retain the fluid much, much better over the period of time. So just the summary slide. So this is the recovery between soccer matches. So we usually have a recovery drink immediately post-match, and then we've got a follow-up 30 to 60 minutes after that, so an hour. Within 3 hours, we have a meal, and then 3 to 6 hours, again a meal, and then before bed or until then you go to bed. So the recovery drink immediately after, remember now what I said, recovery is refuel plus repair plus rehydrate. So you can refuel with carbohydrate sources like fruit or carbohydrate drinks, Energate, Powerade, and so forth. You can repair with protein, so you can have biltong with a Powerade, that would be okay. Or if you've got a recovery drink, the drink will be that the carbohydrate intake will be more than the protein. So if you look at any label of a recovery supplement, the carbohydrate must be higher than the protein, or otherwise milk as a recovery drink. Because remember I said right in the beginning that milk is a dual food, that it's got a protein plus the fuel, and that's why milk is so good. The other one that we need to take care of is the fluid thing. So if you're going to eat a recovery thing, say you're going to eat hamburger patty with a bun, it is still important to drink then either juice or water to make sure that you recover the hydration as well. Then the snack. So an hour after that initial drink, it's important that initial drink that you have it with you So straight after match, if the coach is having a team talk and everybody's sitting around and you're going through the game again, that you have something with you that you can eat or drink, because you need to start the recovery process, because that's going to make you better with the next match. So the snack an hour after is again a carbohydrate predominant stuff with water. So any kind of sandwich, jam sandwich, banana, yogurt and fruits, sports gels, and then again top up the fluid until you get into the 3 hours that you then eat your recovery meal. So that would be a starch plus a protein plus a little bit of fat. So you'll have chicken, for instance, with rice, with some veggies if there is, with maybe, avocado in the salad or a little bit of oil on the salad or so forth. Then again, 3 to 6 hours after that, you will have again a protein plus a carb. So remember now we fed all the carbs. So we make sure the first priority is to make sure that you refuel. And after that, you will see now the protein becomes more important, that you have actually a lower carb with a higher protein intake until you go back to the snack just before bed, where the protein is then important. And as I said, the good snack before bed would then be milk or yogurt as such. All right, so I'm gonna, there's just my email address. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email. We can help you, on the internet or whatever if you're in doubt or if you're worried about your diet. I'm just going to start presenting now, and then I'm going to open the floor for questions.
Okay. Hello, ma'am.
Okay, I'm on my screen. So yes.
I wanted to ask. I saw that earlier you were talking about there was a graph, something like that. It was mild or intense, and you said that you needed to eat accordingly. There was like fat. There was a fat in a graph, and there was also the purple part. And I was wondering, how can you know during a match that it's going to be mild or intense, and that you have to eat accordingly in that way?
Yeah, that's quite a good question, and thanks for that. Because often we would think of opponents as it's going to be an easy game there, and then we surprised in the game. So I would say, because of the nature of football or soccer, I would also always fill up as if I'm going to go hard, always, so that you have the fuel available. If you didn't play that hard, we can always, with the recovery, predict, okay, I had a full tank before I started this game. This game was easy. I didn't spend that much. So I'm not going to eat that aggressive in recovery, because I probably have another half of tank left. So we would rather then adjust afterwards than what we do before. So always feel as if you're going to play a final, the toughest game ever. And then later on, we will rather adjust it. I hope I answer your question with that.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, guys, you can just unmute yourself if you want to ask a question and go ahead.
Hello, ma'am. Just a quick question. So, in terms of the recovery process, maybe like sometimes during the year, some of us have academy training. So, in terms of, like we'll have a school practice in whatever sports we do, but then in an hour's time or 2 hours time, we'll have academy practice. So, in that 2 hour, 1 hour time, how would you suggest in terms of the recovery? Do you think it's a long enough recovery, or like are there certain ways we can recover quickly enough to be up tempo for the intense training?
Yeah, Joseph, that's such a practical question, because it's practically usually quite a big problem for most of you. That first of all, straight after school, that there's not enough time to eat proper, and then you've got a double in the afternoon, and then you get only out of those trainings at 5, which you didn't eat at all. So I think the best thing is, before you go into your first training set, make sure there's enough carbs. So it basically boils back down into the day. So when you have your break at school, your last break, that should be your lunch where there's a big meal. Then straight after school, if you don't have time, to at least have something like a peanut butter sandwich or a bottle of energy drink, something like that. Make sure then you feel your first training set. So sometimes I also get that people don't drink Energade or Powerade or Gain in the set because they think it's not a hard training. But understand that if you're going to go into your store too low, you're going to struggle to recover before the next one. So what I do in the first training session that I have actually will determine how good I recover for the next one. All right. So then you get out of that training set, you say you've got an hour before you go into the academy set. So then it's important to eat again. Usually the easiest thing to have is either flavored milk that you can have, or if you're at a place where you can have maybe a bowl of cereal and milk, because that's something that goes in quite quickly and it's light, you know, it doesn't cause that heaviness. If you are not at a facility where you can do that, you can always mix milk powder with something like Nitro, and you mix it in the container and you just add water and you shake it and you drink it. Or the other thing is then to have something like a cereal bar. So you'll have an energy bar with a banana, but with water, so that we recover. In extreme heat, so if it's very, very hot, so more obviously summertime, even to have something like a rehydrate straight after your first training session until before you go into the academy session will help you to recover a little bit of the fluid. But remember, in that hour, the two most important things is get fuel and get hydration. The protein can come later, but it's about fuel and hydration. And then just the discipline to do it all the time and always carry it with you. Your next training set then, the academy set, will again have carbohydrate drink in the set. So you'll have Game or Energade or something like that. And then you will go into aggressive recovery straight thereafter. Even if that recovery, so sometimes you finish at 5, and then you eat dinner at 6:30. If there's more than half an hour, you know, between end of training and dinner, you should recover. Don't not eat and wait for dinner. So then again, the milky drink or the bowl of cereal and milk when you get home, go through the showers, and then you can sit down and have your supper. I hope that will help. Let us know how it goes if you struggle more.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Ma'am, if you're training on a daily basis, must we take the advice you've given us for matches into our training regime?
Yes. Thanks for asking that question because I didn't mention it. You will be better in matches with what you're doing there if you do everything what you do in training. Remember that training makes us better, not matches. So it's important that we do all these things in all the training sets that we do. It's hard work, it takes discipline, but it's really going to give you so much more of an edge. So it's going to enable you to train better, to recover from training better, which will at the end of the day make you better, but it also will enable you to know what's going on. You will know if milk is working. You will know if game is working. You will know that you can get in jelly sweets quite easily. You will know it's difficult to eat a PVM energy bar if I don't have any saliva on my mouth. So all those things you would know by the time you get to the game. And therefore, I really, really want you to do it every single time during training. There is something of what we call adaptive training, but that is probably not for a whole team setup. There's individuals that we can do that with. So if you've mastered all these things, there's some of the training sets that we do actually in a depleted state to get adaptation. But I don't think that's advice for the whole team. We usually do it with specific individuals that just, you know, step up to the edge.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. I see there is a request that I give them or make the slides available. I will send it, and then you guys can make it available on a platform that's available for all of you.
Okay, great.
Ma'am.
Yeah, I'll ask the question, then you can go, Nubuzi. So sometimes in tournaments, our players can play up to about 210 minutes in a day. And the biggest struggle that they have is struggling with cramp as the tournament kind of goes on. And are you able to replenish whatever salts you've lost just with drinks and food, or do you suggest maybe other supplements that can be taken to kind of help replenish whatever you've lost?
I think, thanks for that one. I think it is possible to do it with food, but it's not probable, if I can put it like that. So I don't think what I see on tournaments is the organization is not always that great that all that stuff is available all the time. So we have limited times that players eat. So I do make use of Rehydrate quite a bit, which is basically just the electrolyte drink. I know there's a lot of sports supplements on the market that's got now electrolytes, separate, little fizzies that they put to water and so forth. I would just not drink like a salt tablet. I will make use of a fizzy that goes into water and is dissolved in water. Because sometimes if we do a salt tablet, they don't drink enough water, and that can cause quite a bit of problems. But I think, there's a few, we don't know what causes cramping. So the conditioning can combine, you would know better than me. If it is conditioning, probably, I don't think it's fair that somebody plays that much soccer in one game, or we don't necessarily train it that way. But if there is a contribution of nutrition, it usually lies in dehydration and electrolytes. I think that is important, and then obviously look at your cooling down strategies and all those things. But I would definitely work in electrolyte supplementation in days like that, and especially if it's hot and people don't get to rest in between. You, Boost? Yes.
Ma'am, I wanted to know. I heard after eating. I'm sorry. After playing, there's a recover. You said there's a recovery, and I wanted to know if you don't eat, will you automatically recover and then break down? And if so, if that's the case, then how long after we eat, after we play, do we eat in order to build?
To recover faster? No. So you're right. I think you're referring to what we call the window of opportunity. So if you finish playing and you delay food, so usually if you finish play and delay food, it will take about 24 to 36 hours. So it's a day to a day and a half to recover the body fully. So that's too long if you have to play 3 matches in one day. So what we try and do is, if we feed or drink in that first half an hour, 30 minutes after you finish the game, then you can buy recovery time. So then you can actually recover in about 8 hours if you're diligent, all right? But I mean, it's hard work. So, and most of the times you won't even have 8 hours. So we must do the best we can do. But that means we have to try within that first half an hour to really be aggressive for feeding. So if I say aggressive for feeding, I mean carbohydrate feeding. So it's not probable that if you play three matches in one day, that there will be protein building. The protein or the protein synthesis will only happen at nighttime when there's complete, rest. So what you need to recover as quickly as possible is fuel sources. You need to get to a petrol station, fill up, fuel up, and get back to the stop. That's basically what you want to do. So if you talk about how quickly we should start, immediately as is comfortable, right? So I think that also takes in consideration that you must plan it. So you can't, after the game now, find out, okay, who's going to pick and pay? Can we quickly have a lift, blah, blah, blah. You need to have it on board. You need to do it within 30 minutes. If you delay for more than 30 minutes, you can still recover, but it's going to take much, much longer. So you will not be, on top of your game by the third game on that day, just because you delay in the recovery.
Nicki,
Sorry, Nicki. What you said about loss of weight and then obviously replenishing with liquid. So I found we went through a stage where we were weighing a lot of our players, like after the last game, and boys would often lost between 3 and 5 kilograms. So I think you said it's about a liter per kilogram. But do you is that what you just kind of put back in, or do you carry on drinking once you've got past that point?
No, you need to carry on drinking. So there's usually two ways in which you can measure it. You can measure weight changes, and it's absolutely brilliant if you can weigh. I mean, it makes people more aware. I don't think we need to do it all the time, but it does increase the awareness. And it does give us an indication of who sweats a lot and who doesn't sweat, who needs more of that fluid and who not. But the other thing is just to drink immediately and carry on drinking until we had a bathroom break, until you went to the toilet and it was a huge volume. So there's always also just that question to the players that you pee since the last game until I play you again. If there wasn't any urine production, he is probably not fully hydrated. All right. So that is important. So it's a liter. As I said, we replenish 100 to 150% because we gather there will still be activity, but we also gather that once you start drinking that huge volume, there's what we call a diuresis. So the body will get rid of quite a lot of the fluid initially. Remember, there's a lot of waste that needs to get out of the body. So that's why we need to drink 150% of weight loss, actually. And then, as I said, then you carry on with that volume properly until you had a bladder emptying and until the color of the urine is right. So you can't just down 1.5 liters. That's not going to do it, no. All right. There was another question.
Yeah, Nicki, sorry, I just wanted to find out two questions. One is, what does nervousness do to the food intake that you've taken before a game? Does that not burn up some of your fuel? And second of all, what happens if you are like gluten intolerant? What type of meals then? How's your eating affected?
Good questions there. Thank you. So if we're nervous, two things happen. Yes, you're burning fuel like crazy. Just by standing, you're burning fuel. So therefore, you need to up the intake. And the fuel that you're burning when you're nervous is carbohydrate. It's sad, but it's true. And the problem is, it's like, driving a car with the aircon on. You just use so much fuel. And the other problem is, if we're nervous, we're struggling to eat because you don't feel, a lot of people feel nervousness in their stomachs as well. So it feels as if there's a brick in your stomach and you're trying to eat and nothing goes in. So in these circumstances, it will make really good sense to eat a big meal 3-4 hours out, because then the nervousness is sometimes still under control if you can. If you play at 8 o'clock in the morning, that's going to be impossible. But then always to have maybe a meal replacement drink with you that you can carry on sipping, or otherwise always have snacks with you that you can carry on eating. So you basically take an energy bar and you cut it in a few pieces that we keep on eating until we get to the game. I think that is important. They need more, and they need it in a form that's easy to take in, because they're not going to sit down for a big meal as such. And that was the one part of the question. The gluten intolerance is it's not impossible, but it makes it a bit more difficult. So somebody that's gluten intolerant is going to get their carbs from potatoes, sweet potatoes, those kind of things, rice, and so forth. So there is some of the stuff that is gluten-free. Naked bars usually is also gluten-free. Excuse me. But I think the importance for gluten intolerance is that will be the player that's going to have to travel with a lot of their own food. So you're always going to have rice cakes with you. You're always going to have fruit with you. You're always going to have fruit juices with you that you can get carb sources. So if you get to a venue and they're serving bread and pasta as their options, there's another way in which I can get my carbs. I'm just going to drink 2 boxes of my liquid fruit and I will get my carbs. So it's not impossible, but it does take more planning, and it does take travel planning, because people also, it's quite easy to tell people, it's gluten, it's gluten free, when it is not really. They just want to quiet you up. So therefore, I would rather make very, very sure that I'd rather travel with my own stuff that I'm sure about, and then you can eat their protein or their steak or their chicken, depending on the spice, and rather make use of your own travel food.
I wanted to know, after milk before you go to bed, what is the next best or the next best alternative source or something that you can recommend that also fulfills, fuel and I think the other one was
Protein.
building or something like
Yeah.
protein. Yes,
So
what's the next best source?
yeah, so it must be a carbohydrate protein mix. So what a lot of other people do is they will, whatever they ate for supper, they will just keep a small plate and eat that again. So you'll eat a piece of chicken maybe with rice. That would be fine. Or you can have, if you, I don't know the reason why you don't like milk or you're allergic to milk. If you're not allergic to cheese, it can basically be a toast with a piece of cheese on it. Or if you don't eat any dairy, it can be toast maybe that you serve with peanut butter, with maybe honey on it, with a cut banana. That can also work for a snack before bed. Or you can have biltong, as I said, as a protein source, and then just have fruit with it. Or you can put an apple and you spread peanut butter on an apple and eat that. So as long as there's a carbohydrate protein mix, you should be okay. What makes milk nice, it's all in one. But I mean, if you mix two different sources, that's perfect. A lot of people also make use of a cereal, so you can use maybe oats even, and then if you don't want to use milk with it, you can use a big spoon of peanut butter, mix it with the oats, and eat that before you go to bed as well.
Hi, ma'am. I would just like to ask what you would recommend for a vegetarian, as I don't get enough protein in my diet. So I would just like to know what you would recommend. Obviously, it's not just for sport, but just for overall, like just as taking enough protein. What would you suggest?
Okay, I didn't hear the full of your question. As I understand, it's about vegetarian eating. If I'm wrong, just ask the question again afterwards. So, is it to the detriment of your performance to be vegetarian? Not at all. Would it enhance performance? Not necessarily. I think that is one thing that we need to get straight. So if you are vegetarian because you prefer that kind of lifestyle or there's ethical reasons, please carry on. But please, those of us that think if I'm going to be a vegetarian, I'll have a better performance, that's not true. Okay. So the things that we look out for when we're a vegetarian, first of all, is the protein, the volume, and the quality thereof. So the volume of the protein needs to be a little bit higher than what we eat meat sources because of the it's not a high biological value. So the availability of the protein in a vegetarian meal is a little bit less. It's not a problem at all. We just need to up the protein. So where we usually will make 20 grams of protein per meal, with a vegetarian we'll make it up to 30 grams so that we make sure that there's enough protein. It is important for the quality of the protein that you mix your protein source, which is now beans or lentils or chickpeas or nuts or seeds, that you mix it with a grain. So you'll eat lentils with your rice, or you'll eat chickpeas with sweet corn. That kind of combinations will give you a better protein profile. The other things that we worry about is iron. So remember, iron is usually quite high in animal protein sources. So there's sometimes a risk of having a low iron intake. That is not a definite, so we can still take iron through spinach and those kind of things. You must just be very aware that you take vegetable sources that's got a high iron content and that you take it with a vitamin C source. So drink a juice with your meal rather than coffee or tea, because coffee or tea will decrease the absorption of iron. The other thing that's important in a vegetarian diet is vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 is a vitamin that you only get in animal food. You don't get it in plant foods. So most of the times when you're vegetarian, you're on a B complex supplement, or some people actually get an injection of vitamin B12 every 6 or 8 weeks. Calcium is in the other one. So if you're a complete vegetarian that doesn't use milk or yogurt at all, then calcium can be a worry if we don't eat enough of the green veggies. So it's important then to maybe make use of a soy milk that is calcium enriched. And there's another one that I can't, zinc. Zinc is the other one because zinc is often found in our animal products, but you can get more than enough zinc if you include whole grains, like brown rice and whole wheat pastas and stuff, nuts and seeds in your diet. So those are the things that we just need to look at and be aware of. And once you fix that, I think it's just very important to remember that it's very difficult if you're a fussy vegetarian. So I sometimes have people that comes and they sit in front of me, they say they want to be vegetarian, but they don't like vegetables. And that, those kind of lines is not going to work well. So you're going to have to leave a little bit of the fusses and make sure you eat a variety of the other stuff that you still include. I hope that answers your whole question. I didn't hear the whole one.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Perfect.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think we've run out of time, Nicki, but yeah, I think we could sit here all day kind of discussing everything with regards to nutrition and being an athlete. I think we'll definitely get you to come and do a talk again in the future, but thanks a lot for all the information that you've given us, and I'm sure the boys will be contacting me to ask if we can set up another one quite soon.
Good. Great. Thanks so much for the opportunity. You're more than welcome. And as I said, use my email, guys, if you have any trouble. I will send the presentation to Clinton, and I think if you can make it maybe available, Clinton, I'm sure you've got a platform where that
Yeah,
is.
I'll put it on. I'll put all the information on our website, and guys can go and have a look at it.
Thanks so much, guys. Have a good day. Stay safe. All right. Eat your
Great.
best.
Thank you.
Stay well. Cheers.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome.
Thank you.